Okay, so we're back with hour 3. So we'll get as many of these requirements done as we can. Hopefully we'll at least get our validate page done and our authentication check working on our beer pages. So in the last hour, just before our break, we talked about the importance of storing the user identity so that basically we can attach that globally as they move around our site. So we have a couple ways we can do it. What would our options be? How can we store a value so that it becomes global, so as a user goes from page to page, that value is persistent? A regular PHP variable isn't going to do the job. So what could we use to store someone's identity? So that would be one option, and that's what we're actually going to use, and we'll talk about why. What would be our other option besides a session? I'll just make a few notes here and I'll put them up on Blackboard later. So we could use sessions for storing logged in users, or what would be our other option?
Right. Or cookies.
All right, so we could use sessions or we can use cookies. What's the difference between what are some of the differences between sessions and cookies? And why do you suppose we might use sessions? Jacob? Sorry, sessions log you out after?
Yeah, after you're gone, right? Or after a few minutes.
Okay, so when you say after you're gone, you're right. Could you but what would that mean technically? So someone logs into our beer store. When would they be? What things could they do that would consider them make them considered gone? Okay, good guess. Our session, that's a good question, right? So I'm logged into Blackboard. If I go to a different site here, I logged out. If I go back, or am I still logged into Blackboard? I'm still logged into Blackboard. Okay, so what things could I do that would actually, there's several different ways that I could log myself out. How could I do it? Okay, so sessions, so they have a default timeout. Anybody know what is a typical, how long typically if you logged into a site and then didn't do anything, just left it open, went for it was a really long line at Tim's, how long typically would you have to be away and come back before you get logged out? Sorry? Typically, depends on the type of web server. Typically, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Brad, I'm going to come back to that. So typically, they will time out in 20-25 minutes, okay, if we're inactive when we're using sessions. Now, we can extend that. So the default timeout can be overwritten. Overwritten in code. So if we want to extend that session timeout and make them last for 2 or 3 hours, we can do it. Although we have to be careful because there's got to be a balance between security and usability. Where are the sessions created and stored? They're not on the client. So the sessions are created and stored on the web server. What about cookies? Yeah, so created, so they are created and stored on the client's browser. How long do cookies typically, again, cookies, they don't have, there is no default timeout. When we create a cookie, one of the things we do is set when it expires. How long do most sites, most sites you go to are putting cookies on your machine. Anybody have an idea what's kind of the standard for how long cookies will typically last? So if you visit Amazon and they put a cookie on your machine, so they typically last for 365 days. That's pretty standard. As soon as you go on a site, they write a cookie that'll be there for a year. Okay. Which one of these, so which do you think is going to be more secure and why? Why, Manoush? Why were sessions more secure? Okay, yeah, they do typically have a shorter time limit.
So the information isn't stored for 365 days, it's only stored for 20 to 25 minutes.
Okay, yeah. Why else would sessions be more secure? So yeah, and what's the implication of that on the server? What can you as the end user do with your cookies? Right. Can be deleted. What else could you do with them? Now, often cookies are encrypted, but if you can figure out if either the developer hasn't encrypted them or you can figure out how they've encrypted them, you can modify them, right? What else can users do with cookies in their browser? Think about your browser settings. Right? If your authentication scheme relies solely on cookies, any user who disables cookies in the browsers will never be able to log in because you can't set an identity cookie. Okay? So the sessions cannot be accessed in any way So these obviously are going to be more secure. So we're going to use sessions. Now, some applications, somebody mentioned Facebook, some applications use both. And I can tell, without ever having seen the code on Facebook, I know that they use both sessions and cookies. Which one of you? One of you back there said, how long does your Facebook login last?
Yeah, it lasts all year.
So how do we know that Facebook uses both sessions and cookies? Log out.
You remember me? Or keep the logged in checkbox.
When you click that checkbox, it's storing your identity in a cookie, right? So every time you come back to Facebook, you don't have to log in because it's already encrypting your ID and putting it in your browser. How secure is this? Compared to using sessions where as soon as you close your browser or turn off your computer or 20 minutes of inactivity goes by, you're logged out and you have to log in again. Which one is more secure? Using the sessions. Never, ever do this, right? Particularly now because we're all on mobile devices. We're on our phones, we're on our laptops. All someone has to do is swipe your device. Guess what? They don't have to log in to any site where you've allowed that site to store your identity in a cookie. They're logged in as you. They can do whatever they want under your identity, okay? I would never keep that checked. Yes, I would log in every time. If it's important enough to make you log in and have to identify yourself, you should have to do it every time you come. Okay, it's a terrible idea. It's convenient as an end user. It also makes your application much, much less secure. Okay, right? Think about it. You build an application and give users the ability to stay signed in. Well, end users lose their cell phones, get their laptops stolen out of their cars. Anybody who has access to that site because you're logged in permanently can go in and compromise that user's data. If you use sessions, well, somebody's logged in, closes their laptop and leaves it for 20 minutes, that session's going to be timed out. So if someone else grabs that device, they're not going to be able to get into your application, right? So this is not secure. And by the way, if you do online banking, you know, remember my bank card, what does it do? Writes your bank card into a cookie. So if someone gets on your device or a hacker, well, you've given away half your credential, right? You may as well hand out your bank card number by writing it, letting your banking website write it in a cookie. Terrible idea. Yes, it's more convenient. It's not secure. So if I can persuade you to start logging out of your social media sites, if I can persuade anybody in the class to do it, I highly suggest you do. It's worth it to have to log in and out. So we are going to use the session object for storing our user IDs, user identities. It's more secure. Okay. So what we need to do now, I'll save this little file and I'll upload it here so you'll have these notes on Blackboard. So here's what we're going to do. I want you to open up this file. It says Lesson 9 in class notes. So click on this. It will open up this Word document, which you can save to your computer. You can scroll past the first page down to page 3. On page 3, this is most of the code we need for our validate.php. This is the page that will check whether the login is valid or invalid. So what I want you to do, and I think we may have done this once before, I've color-coded different sections. So here's most of the code you need, but it's in the wrong order. So I want you to take a couple minutes. You can do this on your own, work with the people at your table, drag and drop or copy it, cut and paste the sections until you think all of the code is in the right order. Okay, this should just take a few minutes. So this is going to check whether user logins are valid or not. So again, this is the lesson 9 in-class notes, and this code is down on page 3. So see if you can put this in the right order. We'll review it together in a couple minutes. There's about 90% of the code here. There's a few other pieces that we'll add in afterwards.
This would be validating the credentials or login credentials. Yeah, perfect. So that way every page is encrypted or every page is password.
No, it's just like we're gonna ask for something here. So I don't think I have a login page. Alright. They just want to put
Or require more. What is it? So this is the page that checks the login.
Yeah, this will be the page that our login form posts to. That will go to the database and see whether the username and password was found or not found. Well, I think on login, in my form that I put on Blackboard, I called it validate.php. So this will be, that's what we'll save this page as.
So the first page,
And post and stuff. Right over.
I'll give you a couple more minutes and then we'll review it together and make sure we've got everything in the right place.
Yeah, like, and then inside the health station, that health station.
Inside the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Health station or whatever. So you're happy, yeah, before you check it. Oh, no, before you check this one.
Oh, yeah.
Looks through. Oh, it looks through the house.
You want to put the commands that connect to the database first, and then reconnect to the database, actually, it needs to pull. It needs to check the user input, so it knows.
So like the county command is inside the 40. What's inside the 40?
What has to be next?
I read that in the book.
What he just gave us this code, we have to. Okay, like, drag and drop where we think each line. Pasting it into your validation. Yeah, but this is not important.
Okay, so what color should be for, obviously the black at the top and bottom we can leave. We've got our start and header at the top and footer and flush at the bottom. What color should come first underneath our header?
Dollar sign username equals post, whatever.
Yep, so we'll take our post values, we'll store them in variables, and at the same time, we're gonna hash the password, right? Because we need to take whatever the user typed in plain text and convert it to a hash value. So I'll drag that up to the top. That's gonna be the first thing we do. Oops. Okay, what color should come next? Tyler?
The required TP.
Yep, let's connect to the database. Okay, what color would come after our, so we've got the light green and the red. Yep, so we're gonna set up our SQL query where we're checking, is there a user ID that matches the username and the hashed password value? We typically connect and then write our SQL query. The purple, you mean?
Yeah.
No, not yet. Because think about it, purple, it's checking a variable called count, which we haven't dealt with, and it also has a loop through an object called users, which also doesn't exist yet.
So you
Okay, yeah, so what color, Priyank? Yeah, so the gray comes next. We connect, we set up our query, we prepare it, fill the username and password, run the query, and we call fetch all, and we store the result that we got back in our users array.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you need to count CMD row too up there.
So we want to move this. What do you suppose? So this is a new line of code. So far, this is actually the only line of code you guys have never seen before. We've never used this row count function. It's fairly self-explanatory. What do you suppose row count is going to tell us? Yeah, when we run a query, this is useful for telling us how many rows our query fetched. So we could even put this on our beers page if we want at the top to display how many beers are in the list, which is a common feature when we display a list. We show how many records at the top so the user knows how big that list is. So row count will tell us how many user IDs match the username and the hash password. And we're storing that in a simple variable. So now purple is next, right? If we didn't find any user IDs, no records were found in that query, it means the login is no good. We didn't find that username password combination in the user table. So we're going to print out a message and we're going to stop.
It should only ever be 1 or 0.
It should be, yeah, we didn't set up to prevent duplicates, but if we prevent duplicate usernames, yes, then that value will always be 1 or 0. 1 meaning they were found and 0 meaning they don't exist. And then we'll need a loop here. And then we'll disconnect. So this is about 90% of what we need. It's in this order. So I'm now going to copy all of this to my clipboard. Just everything that's on page 3. So again, here's the order: light green, red, blue, gray, medium green, purple, orange. So I want to paste this into a new file and save it with the name validate.php. The reason we're going to call it validate is because that's the login form I gave you on Blackboard. That's the page it's looking for. So we'll make a new file. Oops. So copy all of that. Dump it in. That could be indented. So here's most of the code we need. Now the rest of the code, okay, let's see here. So I'm going to ask, for those of you who are seated at a table of 3 or 4, we're going to do this in groups. So you guys can stay together, and the 4 of you. So for those of you that are at a table of 1 or 2, can I ask some of you to move so that you're seated at a table of tables of either 3 or 4? We need to be 3 or 4 for this. Okay. So I don't know. You guys can figure out how or where. People can sit wherever they like. So yeah, 3 or 4. Okay, so maybe you guys each want to join another group of 3. So Emily, feel free to join any other group. Okay, I want you to listen carefully to my instructions because they're a little bit strange. In this page, all the code here should be correct. It shouldn't require any changes. There are 3 lines of code that need to be added. Okay, some of these lines, some of this code is new, some of it isn't. The 3 lines of code are actually taped up in the hall just to the left of the door. Here's what you're going to do. So 1 person at a time. So for example, Brittany, if you go first, and you can't use your phone, you can't use a pen for this. So let's say, Brittany, you're going to go first for this group. So Brittany will go outside. 1 person from each team will go outside. You have to read one of the lines of code and try to remember it exactly. When Brittany comes back in, you're going to tell the other members of your team the line of code, and you guys can just add it. You just need one working copy. Okay, so figure out whose computer you're going to work on. So Brittany, you can't type the line. You have to dictate it to your group, and one of them can type it. When Brittany comes back, someone else from the team can go and learn one of the other 3 lines. So you have to dictate them and get the code correctly. You have to figure out what those 3 lines are doing. You have to put them in the right place in your file. When you have it correct, what should happen is if you put in an invalid login, it should display invalid login. If you put in a valid login that's in the database of the computer you're using, it should redirect the user off to the beers page. So if you log in correctly, you automatically see the beers page. Log in incorrectly, it'll say invalid login. The first team to get the code working properly in the right order, I will buy you guys a donut, a cookie, or coffee next week on break. All right, whichever team finishes and gets it correct first. Okay, don't push it. So only one person per team out at a time, and you have to dictate your code to your team members. So for each team, just work on one computer, get one working version of it, and then we'll go over and review the code and you can share it later. Okay? All right, so go ahead. No phones and no pens. So it's taped up just to the left of the door. One person per team. Yeah, it's invalidate.php. So the file we just copied and pasted from Word.
Okay. Okay, so I'm typing, but you are the session.
Somebody else. Yes.
You don't have photographic memory? You must have a really large campus. Most useful information probably.
Rob, you can't go twice.
Yeah, if you forget, you can go back.
He's going to be on in the loop the whole time.
Okay, Brian, you can't type it if you saw it.
Yeah, I already told you. Where does it go? Session before I forget.
Square brackets. Single cross. Yep, the next.
User ID.
It's no.
Stop, it's equal to the row. It's equal to the row. It's equal to the row user.
It's not bad.
It's equal to the right?
Code break.
Or the values broken out.
Equals.
So there might be a
No.
okay, so.
Equals variable underscore user.
It does not underscore between the two words, right?
So variable.
Especially if that's already.
Yeah.
And so user.
So it doesn't expel?
No, no.
But it was 2 words. And it was a variable. Or no, it wasn't. It was 2 words, and they were separated by a dash.
Sorry.
Come on, bro. That's fine, I'll do it.
You love Cal, you had like 2 words.
We will fix it. Don't worry. The rest of the things are good, though.
Come on, Rob.
You can't go outside. No, you have to sit back down.
What? It's my turn.
We're not done yet. Equals. Omar, you go at the same time. Once he's back, you can go.
Yeah.
Just one at a time.
Well, let's see if we can figure it out.
Single bracket. User underscore.
So that has to be looped through, like,
Are you sure?
User underscore.
That's not it. That's one. That's one.
that should start, so there would be another one. There's no space. So there would be the same one like that. But I'm thinking it would be the same one like that.
Sorry.
How many times have we bumped?
You already know this one.
This is all gonna be like next week. Oh, I did. So go see it on.
Look at it.
You know what? If you were a team member, you just try to remember the whole thing. So would you, and so would you. Yeah. Alright, it's okay, we're not.
So this line is wrong.
Yeah, you want them to do 3 times? Okay, I probably wouldn't remember 3 digits.
So basically,
It's the same thing over time.
It's actually redirecting. So it's a header rotation.
Okay, we'll try it out.
So go to your login,
You can't type it out.
You gotta tell me.
You have
That's
to
the whole
help.
point. That's the point. You gotta tell me.
Well, I just told you.
No, tell me. Header?
Yeah.
God. You gotta tell me the whole thing.
Header, colon.
Yeah, you gotta remember, so I think this. No, you're not. That's the whole point.
That's the point. You're not letting it out.
Has to do information.
No, it's so irrelevant. It is.
It's not irrelevant.
But you're not letting it
That's
out.
starts off.
That's the next, just a colon.
Try it again, test it first yourself, but header,
Space, dot.
I think it's a colon, header, colon. Yeah. Not like, yeah. Yeah, location.
Space.
Yeah.
Every session start.
Header, colon. Beard.
Go look at it again. Just before.
Why can't I just look? You can't remember.
Oh, you can't, just go. Stick to the plan. Yeah.
I'm just gonna go.
What do you mean I can't?
So. It's in brackets. So header, and then it's in brackets, and then
What's in brackets?
like, header is the function, location. So, like whatever. Yeah, so there's no.
We have winners.
Okay, so what you guys need to do, I need one of you to send me your names. Don't take this name. You have the ability to find it for follow-up for next week. And then we'll go on for the next week.
Maybe it's Saturday.
I mean, close the bracket.
Actually, we can use that hash as an
Everything.
This whole thing?
Yeah, but
Realistically,
No,
if you're able to remember.
Okay,
so all of that.
Actually, one of my
it's going to the validate page, right?
So in this situation, maybe it's.
So yes, it will compress it. It would be right. Okay, any of the other
So
groups
it's missing.
not working yet? Yeah, you can still try to get it working.
This one.
Just because you don't get a cookie doesn't mean.
I guess it'll lose
Yeah,
interest in
it's
the
stage.
Yeah,
you can.
That's the beginning, right?
I can give you a few more minutes and then we can look at the solution together.
And then what?
And then start session and redirect.
All of it, all of it.
Or it's session start.
Session start.
Start session or session?
No,
start?
we're
I'm just like.
It was session start. Session underscore start. Okay, you guys are close, but not. Try it, yes. No. It actually, you know what, it actually will run that way, but once we do next step, step 6.
Session has to start before you can move your.
That's right. Omar, what you said is exactly
That's the
right.
function.
Once you guys move that, then you should. And then you can relocate.
And then redirect. Yeah. What's it for a second?
A hearty congratulations. Satisfaction of a job well done. Right, so we're doing this, right? This is what's happening. If the login is correct, we want to do this and then take Satisfaction for me was actually hearing a student in the middle of my lesson today. I think it was you who said, "This is fun."
Yeah. It's like a little game puzzle slash. Cool.
You can only follow along so much sometimes.
You want to do it?
I don't want it.
That was fun.
Okay, any of the other teams think you may have it running?
Okay, so hold on. So what do I do now? What do I do?
You can negotiate.
Check it. What do I go check? What do I want?
Type in Invalid, go to login and type Invalid.
Negotiate.
Oh, no. I have one.
Then you're gonna do it for me.
When you registered,
Yeah.
use one of those login.
I'm gonna do
Try
it.
to log in and see if it.
And you do it. Remember the thing that we had?
Still something you guys need to move.
Maybe if
You have to, like, you can't pull the password.
Remember the day that
No, I know.
generation out of jam? So you have to do. Where you want to go. I know.
Did it work? Okay, we got it working.
Okay, I'll come up with a test. I'll say.
So, it was X and X.
Yep.
Okay.
You got it. Okay, let's go through this. So a number of the teams have got it, and other teams are very close. Okay. So what's the first command I need to add here, and where should it go? Of the 3 lines you got from outside, which is the first one?
Session underscore start.
Yeah, so we need session underscore start. Where should I put it? It could go in one of a few places. Where would it make sense to call session start? Yeah, in here, that if we found, we could call it earlier on, but there's really no need to call session start until we know we have a valid username and password. Session start, I notice my code editor recognizes a built-in PHP function. It's actually not a very well-named function. It doesn't mean start the session because the sessions are started automatically on the server as soon as we visit. It more means connect to or access the existing user session. So access the existing user session created on the server. Okay, so what's the next command and where should it go? What line number?
Variable underscore session. Or money.
Okay, and where should I put that?
Right after that.
No.
After the for each.
It's after the for each?
Actually, my code's in the for
It has to go inside while we're looping through our loop of one user. You can put it in the loop, it doesn't matter. We don't need to do it. So we're going to use the session collection, which we haven't used before. So we're creating a global variable. So long as this user is on this website and it hasn't timed out and they're in this one browser, we're creating a global variable called user ID and storing it in the session. Okay. And the value is coming from the user ID column in our SQL query. So take the ID from the database, store it globally in the session object. So as long as the user's on our website and hasn't timed out, hasn't closed their browser or been inactive, we're going to keep that ID current so we know who this person is. Keep in mind, session variables, they do take a bit of overhead, so we don't want to use too many session variables or our website's going to start to slow down because this is all stuff that the server has to store in memory. So use them, but use them judiciously. Okay? So we're taking a value from our database query and storing it in the session object. So it will be global on any page in our site so long as that session stays active. And what should we do next? Last line.
Username and password matches, then we look at.
Yeah, so now we could put it here, we could put it down below our connection. We're going to take the user to beers.php. Actually, a few things I think I will move around just for beers. We want to take them to the list page. I'm actually going to move my connection up. We can actually disconnect up here. It's just a little faster, even before we evaluate whether we got a row. I'm going to comment out the exit because I realize that's preventing our footer from showing down at the bottom. So we'll just say if the count is 0, print out invalid. If the count isn't 0, it means we found that username with that password. So access the session, store their ID in the session variable, and redirect them. This line is critical. If we don't call session start, we can't put any values into session variables or read any values out of those variables. So whenever we want to access the session object, we need to call session start first. So I'm going to try this out now. So session start, this has to go inside the loop, and the header location doesn't really matter. Could go after the loop, I suppose. It's okay there. So I'll try it. If I put in an invalid login, tells me it's invalid. If I put in valid login, it takes me here to beers. So that's what we want. So we've created our page for checking logins. We also need to do this. We can do this quickly. It's about 4 lines of code. Our beer pages are still public. So even though I can sign up and I can log in, we haven't done anything with those beer pages. Anybody can still go to them. So we need to write a little script that will do a security check that will tell us if the user is logged in or not logged in. We're going to need that script to run on this page. We need it to run on this page. We also need to do it on our delete and save page. So we're going to repeat that script on all of these pages so that we only want to write that code one time. So what would be the most efficient way for us to write that code so it can be shared? Yeah, let's put it in a separate file. So let's make one new file. We'll just put some PHP tags on it. So let's just check if our session user ID is empty, that means we have no user identity being stored globally. So either they've timed out or they've come to a page and then have never logged in. So what should we do if this value is empty? Yeah. Take them to our login page. Oops, should be login.php. Or we could make it default.php, either one. And exit. That's it. There's our little authentication check. So let's save this file. Let's give it a nice short name so it's easy to include it. We'll call it auth.php. Simple to type. Oops. Should be auth. Hang on. I messed up my file. Just a second. Let me delete it and redo it. Auth.php. So now I get my color coding once I save it as a PHP file. So now all we need to do on our 4 beer pages is let's require this page up at the very top. Should be among the first things we do. So if the user, we don't know who they are, let's kick them back to the login page. So I'm going to open up beers.php. We still need OB start as the first line, but now our authentication check is super easy. Oh, we used require for our others, so we'll require auth.php. That's all we need to do to make this page private. So before we load the header, run our query, display all the beers, we're going to check, do we know who the user is, yes or no? Now let's try it. We may have to make one small change to it. Let's see. So I'm logged in here in this browser. Ah, interesting. I was logged in. So what do we need to do? Why, even when I put in a valid login, why is my session user ID always empty? What do I need to do so that I can access it?
Is it because the auth.php doesn't know what the user ID is?
No. What did we do on this page before we could access that variable? What do we do on line 25 before we put a value in the session? We have to call session start. Every time we want to access the session object, so on auth.php, we'll need to call session start first. Otherwise, that session variable is always empty on this page. You can't read it. So we did actually store our identity in validate, but this page couldn't see it. So we just add session underscore start bracket bracket first. So now I'm going to go back. I'm going to log in again. And I realize we're about out of time. So now I can get to my beer listings. If I try to go here, if I copy this URL though and go to a private window, which doesn't share the session, says, no, you're not logged in. Or I go to a different browser, try to go back. Nope, go to login. So we've secured that page now. So all we need to do, and you guys can do this at home because we have to get out of here. On our other pages with the word beer in the name, so there's beer, delete beer, and save beer. Up at the top here, we'll need to add OB start and OB flush at the bottom in case we're redirecting. And then we'll add our authentication check. So OB start at the top. Require auth. And down here, after we require our footer, my AddEdit page is now private as well. If I go to Chrome where I'm not logged in and click Add Beer, right? So I go to back, my home page is still public, but when I try and add a beer, nope, sorry, you're not logged in. Back to the login you go. So we'll want to add this to default and save as well. Users shouldn't be able to access those pages unless they're logged in. Okay. All right.